Welcome to Your Money Story. I am Dawn Thomas, a mother of three, financial advisor by day, and a PhD candidate researching the superannuation experience of Generation Z. This podcast provides a platform for stories which are underrepresented. Everyone's money story is unique. My guests are people who conduct their lives with purpose, authenticity, and are not afraid to be different. They stand out within their industries for being themselves. I hope their journeys inspire you to harness your own gifts and talents. I am a believer in living your truth each day. Let's change how the story ends. In the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. The information discussed in this podcast does not take into account your personal and financial objectives and situation. Before acting on any information discussed here, you should consider its appropriateness, having regard for your objectives, needs, and financial position. Welcome, Kelly King, to this episode of Your Money Story. I am beyond thrilled to have you here with me today.
I'm thrilled. I'm so excited. I am absolutely honored to be part of this. So thank you for inviting me.
Oh, Kelly, always very appreciative of your support of the podcast series because we have a small community of listeners. I'm hoping to grow that.
I've always been a fangirl. So, and I only listen to 2 podcasts personally, and yours is one of them.
Oh my goodness.
So, I have very limited listening time. Yes, I was very excited. 50% chance of getting on one of my podcasts. So, yay.
No, you are phenomenal, Kelly, and introduced to each other to have a catch up. And immediately I felt a sense that, you're one of my people. I really, really enjoyed talking to you, and I enjoyed, you've got that beautiful balance of just being like this kick-ass warrior with this coupled with, common sense kind of approach. Like, don't mess with her, but she has a heart.
That's a lovely way of putting it. My husband would say otherwise, but yeah.
How would he describe the Kelly at home?
Abrupt sometimes. He's a very good compass for me, actually. So I do run things past him sometimes to see whether I've gone a little bit too far or not far enough. So he's a great partner to have, actually.
I think our partners are they see all facets. Possibly.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes say, like, being a partner of a financial advisor is a tough gig. Like, how has that been for your family, seeing you have to navigate the changing landscape of advice the last number of years?
It's great when he works in a completely different field. So he's an electrician and he's FIFO. So one of the advantages of FIFO is that you speak every night. So you speak every night without the disruptions of other things. So, when he asks about my day, he's genuinely invested and interested. And we've gone through this for well over a decade. So he's got a different point of view because he's not in the industry. So I think I value a lot of his input for that reason. He's not trying to explain what I should do. And he's always on my side, but he has that rational thinking in a different light. He's in a supervisory position as well. So he works with other people and understands the frustrations sometimes of things not going your way. So he's really good.
Oh, well, you've had a long career in the banking space within advice, and you've had a significant juncture. You have your own business now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How has that transition been? Because it's a long time, like you said, over 20 years, right, that you've been in the banking space. How has that been from you to go from that former life to this, what I see as a really liberated life that you are?
Yeah.
You're grabbing, yeah, I don't know. You look like you're enjoying yourself.
I'm having a fat time. And I actually really enjoyed my career in the banking sector. I do like structure. I am very process driven, and a large institution provides you with that, even though sometimes you don't like it for a majority of it. I was very happy with the structure and the processes being set forward, and that offers you a lot of safety, I think. Like, it gives you a bit of a blanket there. And coming out into the open market as a self-employed person, I had a fair idea that the level of support would be nowhere near what I had. But yeah, it certainly fell a lot shorter than my low expectations. So I was surprised that there's not a massive, there's virtually no support from the licensee in terms of things like processes, day-to-day processes, workflows, that sort of stuff. So starting all that stuff from scratch is really, really hard. My business partner and I are both very process driven, and so we're on the same wavelength there. So, you're creating something from scratch and learning new software, teaching all of this to VAs who are all very new to the industry. So that's been a really big learning curve. But on the plus side, I have a lot of creative freedom, which I didn't have before. So things like all the philanthropic stuff that I do, at my last job, putting your name to things like women's refuges and things that, a bit like the royal family, right? You can support an animal charity, but don't go into, human rights.
Yes.
So yeah, I've loved that aspect of being able to support the things that I want to support openly.
Yes.
And not to have to ask in what context I'm allowed to participate. So that's been very good. Things like promoting my personal values.
Yeah. That's coming across, like it's coming across your content. I just spoke to Jessica Brady before this, and I actually, with her bursting forward with Greenhouse, I felt you're bursting forward with Iconic. It was like, I felt, whoa, I'm seeing content everywhere, right? And that is fantastic. But Jess said there was a lot of work in the lead up before that seemed like, it just happened overnight. For you, so what was that lead-in process? Because it looks like, your presence, I see your presence on various platforms. It looks like you're thriving, you're having fun, you're living your values. But what was that process like to get to that point where it just looked like, oh, I'm arrived?
Yeah, I have had help, most definitely. The small business community in Mandurah in particular is a very giving community, and the workspace that I work in is called WOTSO, which nationally is a co-working space. So we have fixed offices, but I'm surrounded by business advisors, people who work in a space of content creation, entrepreneurs. So I'm learning so many things from going to the kitchen in the workspace. You are think you're going to get a glass of water and you come back with the details of someone you should be speaking to about content. So I've had a lot of help there. And also the other podcasts that I listen to, which I'd highly recommend, is Tori Archbold. She is a PR marketing extraordinaire. She's just written a book, actually. Self-belief is your superpower. Ooh. And I've been on her business attraction program. She is absolutely massive. She used to do the PR for David Jones, Drew Barrymore, and she's had an extraordinary career. And she gave me some amazing insight into the world of LinkedIn and social media and what works and what doesn't work. So I have absolutely invested in recipes for success in that space. So I think it's something I've not ever done before because I haven't been allowed to.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do it right. And I guess being quite a methodical person, I'm like, right, there's someone out there who's doing an amazing job already. I'll just find who they are and learn from them. So yeah, I think building a personal brand and understanding what your value set is really important. And being authentic is one of my values. Authenticity, integrity, and delivery.
Yep.
So authenticity is definitely what comes across with content. Because, you know, what makes you different, you know, and you're very good in this space too, you know, what makes you different from the next financial planner who is working in your space or wants the clients that you want. People want to see that you are a real person, that you are approachable, especially in financial planning. People are afraid of making a commitment to come and see professions like us. So I think, being real is very, very important.
I wouldn't say that I was surprised to see how much of content coming out that quickly from you. Because I think maybe my expectations, when someone leaves the bank, there's still a lot more of a period where they're settling into non-bank life. But I feel like you just went straight into it, because it's just amazing how it seems like everything was just set up really well. You understood what your voice was, and now you're coming out with content. Does it seem like a quick process in your mind, or does it feel longer than and what maybe we might think looking at it?
My brain is overflowing with stuff, I think, because it's been suppressed for so long, in terms of being able to say what I want to say, without being, you know, without having to check everything first.
Yeah.
I have tons more to say. I just don't have time to put it in my later app at the moment. I'm absolutely flat out, but I know it's something that you must make time for, just the same as you must make time for client appointments and compliance and all the rest of it. So I think I've got plenty more where that came from. It's just finding the time to make it happen. So yeah, and I think the more I speak to people who work very well in this space, the more I write down these ideas, and they don't have to be super current. It can be stuff that you can do and put up later.
Yeah.
I've got so much more to do, and that's probably one of the other things that I miss in terms of the bank is mentoring, to be honest. I have mentored a lot of planners in 25 years and some amazing people and some great, well, I call them kids because they felt like my kids at the time. Some of them were older or the same age as me, but I miss that. I miss that a lot. And I'm trying to work in a space where I can do some type of program. A professional year with someone at the moment isn't something that I can commit to of being the first year of my business.
Yes.
But I'm thinking in a different capacity, so watch this space. But yeah, my husband's also the one who goes, "You're overcommitting. Calm down." Because when I think of an idea, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And then he's like, you're doing your masters. So he goes, that's 200 hours in 3 months. Do you really think that's smart to start that now? Can you not do that later in the year? And I'm like, yes, you're absolutely correct. Thank you thank you, compass of life. I appreciate your input. So yeah, there's lots going on in this brain, this whirlwind of mine. Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful brain. One of the things that the brain was, I was surprised to hear in one of the videos. I asked, you remember how I was asking all the Inspire committee members to have a video about International Women's Day and what they hope for Inspire. And you said you identified yourself publicly as a modern feminist. Now, yes, okay.
Yes.
And my experience is like, I consider myself a feminist as well, but I find that it's become like a dirty, misunderstood word. First, what's your definition of a modern feminist or a feminist?
So my definition of a feminist is someone striving to improve the welfare of women, both domestically and internationally, and to bring awareness to issues that impact women specifically. But I absolutely get what you mean. You know, when I say to people feminist, they think of Germaine Greer burning a bra. And man-hating is probably the most common thing. But I think even if you Google the definition of a feminist, it doesn't talk about men at all. So, because it's not what it's about. You know, I do think in the modern light, you know, I use that word because I'm trying to bring awareness to women about empowering themselves. So, you know, I think changing the narrative many women still have to compete and tear each other down is still rife. And you know, I absolutely put my hand up and say that there have absolutely been decades in my life where I have done that because it's a learned behaviour.
Yes.
You know, a lot of it stems from, you know, your mum or your aunties or the first women in the workplace going, you know, they're all nice to your face, and then behind the back it's like, oh, you know, see what she was wearing, and it's just you have to untrain yourself because it is a learned behaviour from decades, and I don't know anyone that could honestly say they've never been that person. So there's still a lot of it, and you know, my aim is to create packs of cheerleaders everywhere to promote and remove the long-standing shame women have of promoting themselves. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like I was talking to the photographer who came to do a branding shoot the other day, and you know, she was saying, oh yeah, I should get the background shots, you know, the action shots herself. She's like, oh, but I don't want people to think I'm taking photos of myself. And I'm like, why? She's, I don't know. It's just, you know, like you're gloating. And you just, this is the problem. We feel uncomfortable saying nice things about ourselves, and that needs to change. So I know in the environments that I've been working in Mandurah and meeting all these amazing women doing amazing things, you start pumping each other up, mate, and the whole mood, the whole attitude, the whole environment changes, and it's contagious. So I think in the modern aspect, I'm a feminist in the way that I'm working on women promoting themselves. You know, a lot of the barriers that women have are barriers created by their peers, you know, and by themselves. So don't get me wrong, there are absolutely things that need to change that aren't that, but I think we can all do the second part. All of us can do the latter part in promoting and cheering
Yes.
cheering for the great work that women are doing, because it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I get that from you, that it is a genuine support of other women. When there's conflict, sometimes it can be coming from a place of being in a patriarchal system where, we're maybe taught that there's only one sport that's available there for a woman, and if you see another woman, it could be competition rather than collaboration.
Yes.
And definitely what I found in the women that I connect with and advise, you included, is that connection piece is so important to also feeling really safe and also leaning into your own strengths. When you've got that community that is there for you, then you're not going crazy. Because sometimes you might be in a situation and you'll be like, am I the only one who's thinking there's something wrong with this situation?
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know, I do feel like it stems back to the dark ages, like when the man went out and got the food, and the women competed for the best provider.
Yeah.
And there are elements of that society everywhere in today's society, and I think, sometimes small communities too, people who've got nothing better to do, and if they're not talking about someone, what are they talking about? So
True.
I think it comes from all around the place, but it is still very common in the schoolyard still. So trying to change that narrative, I think, is really important, because it's not very healthy.
I think we're all coming together. I do believe that your little projects won't be so little. Your areas of impact that you are spreading yourself through the community, which is not just advice. How does feminism, you think, play a part in the financial advice offering?
More around financial literacy, that women do tend to be more vulnerable in that space. So say, for example, like I've been doing lunch and learns at my daughter's daycare centre, because most of the girls there are around 20 to 25, and they're unlikely to be in a position where they're going to seek financial advice, but they know generally the least about money. It's not taught in schools still to this day, which I do not understand. I don't understand, how science is more important than financial literacy. But, just financial literacy would be the main thing, I think, from a feminist point of view. And I think that's something. Education is power, and if I can spend a couple of hours in the lunchroom giving back to these girls who virtually raised my children, then to explain superannuation and explain why zip pay and all those other things are bad for you. It's time well spent, because if you can get in there early and change or guide some of those behaviours, it will make a massive difference to them as adults. And I think there's not enough of that. There's not enough of that done. So I'm keen to spread the word as much as possible, and ideally to the younger generation who wouldn't typically be able to afford advice, unfortunately, or they wouldn't go and seek it. And also the other thing with Lunch and Learn is it's at their workplace and it's a safe environment. So if they don't want to tell their partner that they are accessing that information, financial abuse is, and I don't want to imply that any of those people are in any type of abusive relationship, but it could just as easily happen to them or to anyone. And I don't know, people just don't realise how quickly the tables can turn.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, yeah, they don't have access to money.
The area of domestic violence is also something that's close to your heart, right? And it's come across as well with even the International Women's Day event that you organized, which was a powerful, powerful event. That is something that's evident that it's very close to your heart. Why is it important that we talk about domestic violence and it's not something that is just swept under the rug as a personal issue in a household?
It's something that can happen to anybody, and it is close to my heart because I was a victim of domestic violence in my early years. So from the ages of about 17, I met a guy and entered a relationship, and then we moved in together and through to about age 23. And, you know, being the first relationship, you know, everything's together and your joint bank accounts, and if he wants a car loan, your name's on the car loan, and all those types of things, which you just go with the flow because you're in love. And, you know, you're not in a position to take, you know, rational advice from your parents because what do they know?
Yeah.
You know, so young love. And so, yeah, that sort of turned a bit sour, and there was a lot of pushing and shoving and throwing of plates, and I think I didn't really see it as domestic violence at the time because he wasn't smashing my face in. And it's only in the last sort of probably decade that I've realised the impact that had on my life. But it was difficult. So that it came to a point where he was going to punch me in the face. So he had me by the scruff of the neck and drew his arm back, and he stopped himself, which that was nice of him. And so the next day he left. I said, you know, you need to leave, which wasn't unusual. We'd had fights before. So he left assuming he was coming back. But I changed the locks to the house. And then when he came over next day and realised what had happened, he said, it's over and, you know, this is it. And he said, you know, I'll burn the house down while you sleep, bitch. And God's honest truth, I said, I would rather die than spend another day with you. So, and I shut the door, and that was the end of seeing him. But the next phase was unraveling financially what we had put together, which was a lot of personal debt, because he was a bit of a dropkick, and there was a lot of debt that my name was attached to, and I couldn't afford to pay all of it by myself. And he knew that because I had a job at the bank in financial planning, that I also could not go bankrupt. I would lose my job. So I managed my way out of that. But it does make you realise that, you know, that's financial abuse, which you can now label that. But I just, at the time, I thought, you know, I didn't want to go to my parents. My parents would absolutely have helped me, but, you know, it's embarrassing. And, you know, someone who's fiercely independent, the thought of telling my parents that this person that they didn't like, you know, had done this to me. To be honest, I was probably more afraid that my dad would shoot him. So, yeah, I managed my way out of that situation. But the lasting impact is that every time I see young girls who have no career aspirations, no need to work full time, no desire, and it's very, very common. I think, how can you pay rent by yourself? How can you, get out of trouble yourself? Like, and that worries me. And I saw it every day at the bank. I see it every day with relatives sometimes, and like young nieces and nephews. And I think, everything's roses until it's not. And yeah, I don't, there's still a lot of girls out there who are waiting to be looked after. And I think when you look at the generation now of older women, so women in their 50s and 60s are the highest rate of homelessness.
Yeah.
Because either the relationship has disintegrated because maybe he's not happy, but he can go and work, whereas she potentially hasn't worked for the last 30 years.
Yes.
So she's homeless. And then you got the other side where there's a whole bunch of women who don't want to be with their partners, but think, well, the alternative is homelessness.
Yes.
So because they haven't got a career, or they haven't put enough input into that, because they've not assumed, but there's always that, well, there'll always be there will always be someone supporting me, and yeah, that's just really scary to me. And I do see the receiving end of that with women, and widowers. A lot of women don't understand what the finances are at that stage of life either.
Yes.
It's just rife, and I just think, that's why I try. And when I talk to the girls at the daycare center, I'm like, do you have your own money?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. Like, you can have a joint bank account, that's fine. But if someone who's thought about separating from you for some time, goes, well, I'll tell you, and then I'll clear out the bank account, and your pay's going into that only bank account. I'm like, you have access to no money. And they just don't think that's going to happen to them. And, I don't think anyone who is a victim of financial abuse assumes it's going to happen to them. But
they may not realize it as well. I think this, like you're saying, that it took you a bit of time to understand what had happened to you. And my disappointment with this is that it's not a lot of safe environments to talk about domestic violence, because it's like, you're being a bit of a wet blanket, and then suddenly it's and if you talk about it being gendered, with the statistics show that it is usually violence against women, then you could be labeled as you're against all men, and that is not what is being said. So I find around this topic, people can get prickly because they think that you're accusing someone of something, or accusing a gender of something. But we're really talking about women being put in a really difficult position, that it's really hard for them to get out if they're not financially independent. And also the financial abuse part could also mean that they are being stuck in this scenario. Like you said, you had debt associated with your name. How do you unwind yourself financially after you've going through that? I do applaud you for being actually open and seeing that, right? So that's, for me, when I saw on social media that you talked about the fact that you had been a victim of domestic violence, it's probably one of the few times I've actually seen someone, even in my network, talk about it. And I love that you're being open about it, even as an advisor. That's why I said I see that freedom that you have, Kelly, and it gives people that that sense that maybe they can talk about it as well.
Yeah, and I got a lot of messages from professional women.
Yeah.
And some people, just like anything, to be honest, you got people who are comfortable saying things, even if
Yeah.
it's really uncomfortable to say them.
Yes.
And you're doing it because you know you're not alone. I
Yes.
knew when I said it, I
Yeah.
was not alone.
Yeah.
I know that plenty of people think that their situation isn't serious enough. And that's just not the case. Like, if you feel scared of
Yes.
the person that you love, you are being abused. I don't
Oh,
care what way, shape, or form you call it.
Yeah.
That's abuse, you know. And it isn't easy to leave. And, you know, there's very typical patterns over and over again. Oh, I'm sorry. And, you know,
Yeah.
it won't happen again. And
it does happen. Yeah.
it does, and it always escalates, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think more awareness needs to be brought to it. And to me, like, you look at some of the recent media, like Jared Hayne, for example, and wherever there's sport, there's people going, oh, but he's a good bloke. You know, you just think, no, you might be good at sport, but he's
that's
not
the thing
a good
is,
person.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there are, you know, it's either not talked about because it's seen as a personal household issue, which makes the person even more isolated in terms of getting out.
Yeah.
And then when you're starting to make excuses for people because they are so brilliant at doing something else in their life, but they're doing that. And I think that's where, coming back to feminism, you know, I want to say I'm a feminist because I feel that in terms of equality or equity as well, there's a long way for us to go for women to actually be respected and valued the way we should be. When you hear these stories, it's just so much of sadness. You know, I had a client who saw me separately to a partner who is trying to go through the process of separation, but her partner doesn't want to separate. And she kind of said, the moment that he cut off my credit card was the moment that I suddenly realized I don't know if I can trust him, because if I want to say that I'm separating, and you've got things like trustees of super funds, you know, when everything is so connected, even trying to say when you want to leave, it's not as easy as if someone's willing to make all of that really hard for you.
Absolutely.
The other thing about it as well, Kelly, was that you and the WA committee put on this amazing session for International Women's Day with Casey Venter, and listening to her raw story, really, I think you can't really describe the emotion unless you were in that room. But one of you know, our male attendees that we invited, I think he felt quite confronted by it. I think on one hand he felt, I really feel for her, but on the other bit, he was very conscious that he was a man in the room. And then I try to explain to him that it is not like, because he said that he almost, this is what he said to me, and he was being honest, right? A lot of this is conversation. He said that he wanted to actually stand up and ask women, whether, you know, how many of you have husbands that actually treat you right? Because he felt that he was targeted in terms of that. So, you know, that was an interesting response.
That's an interesting response.
Yeah, but he was okay. He was at least he was there, right? He put himself in that difficult position, and we were able to talk about it. And I felt that's really showing a lot of openness from him, because he put himself in a very uncomfortable position. The other response we got when we got back is that someone asked, "Oh, so you went for International Women's Day? Is it just talking about hating on men? Like, do you hate men more or something like that?"
Oh, that's it, honestly.
And it wasn't a lot. It was just a comment. But I think after feeling that event and being so raw from sitting in that room with a lot of other women, with male advocates as well, and listening to Casey Venter's story, and us mostly being in the financial advice profession, and then somebody actually asking you that, like, I didn't have time for it that day.
Oh, I know.
I was just like...
And you know, like Casey's story, on that day, that's a snippet. That's a tiny snippet of what she's been through. But I was saying to another male participant, another male attendee who come up, and he said, "Oh, it was so great, but I wasn't sure whether
how to react."
I said, "Oh, you know, I've spoken with Casey about this, and you know, she didn't say it today, but she said in a lot of the meetings that we've had that her biggest advocates when she was turning up to work with black eyes.
Yeah.
Where men were going, "Are you okay?" Whereas the women she was working with looked away. And you know, she's absolutely, her perpetrator is a man.
Yeah.
But that is not what it's about.
No.
And Casey, honestly, she absolutely advocates for her biggest supporters were men during that time. And I can honestly say I didn't have bruises, but I know that in my workplace, if I said to any of my superiors, look, I'm having trouble at home, I need help, without hesitation, I know the men that I was working with at the time would not have hesitated to assist me. So it isn't ever about hating on men, but I get that certainly. And I've heard this comment a lot. Sometimes they go, well, I'm a big supporter of women, but I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So it can be a hard space for them to navigate with when you're having these types of conversations. You know what I mean? It's like when you use the word feminist, even talking to my husband, I was telling him what I was talking about today, and he's like, "Oh, feminist," and I'm like, "What does it mean to you?"
Yeah.
And he's like, angry women.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's not. I feel like maybe after the International Women's Day event, when then I was asked if we hated men, then I became like an angry woman. I did admit I was provoked because we came back really feeling quite vulnerable from that session. And when someone's reduced it to, oh, you're just a group of ladies who have decided to hate on women. Not that they just said it that way because things happen when people assume we're doing something for International Women's Day events. Yeah. And that wasn't it at all. And you kind of go, how brave was it of Casey to get up there and tell the story? But not even that. It was so raw because you could see her shaking and see her holding back the emotions around it. I just felt it's not honoring the woman who bravely stood up and shared that with a whole room of strangers. For me, that's what got me angry because I just went, I'm not having it now. Like usually we sugarcoat these topics, we tiptoe around it. But I feel with the statistics around women dying, it's 1 every 9 days.
Exactly.
It's one in 6. It's in terms of emotional and physical violence, and most of them have financial abuse weaved into it when it's those stats. I wonder why we're so I understand why, but we're so apologetic about talking about it. And how can you not feel angry about the statistics when that's how women are?
I think society tells us that we're probably not going to be believed.
That's right.
I think that's a massive issue. And I mean, realistically, I'm sure there are people who are liars, but the other 99%, you're harming yourself by revealing that in a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So why would you choose that path? And this is where the issue is. Most of those statistics are just a snippet of what's actually happening because most of it is unreported.
Yes.
So that's what gets reported.
Correct. So it's not even that for anyone who thinks that it's a great way to get back at people. Yes, maybe you might have a very small percentage who might be psycho enough to go that route. But for the people who are actually doing it, like you said, you don't understand the shame or the embarrassment that you're even going through it. And it's really hard. The isolation piece, I think, is the key thing at stopping you from getting out as well, because you're so isolated, probably from the perpetrator as well.
Absolutely.
That sense, So,
I didn't tell anybody. Because I hate sympathy. It's just I don't
like, you don't want it to define you, right? Yeah, you don't want it to define you.
I don't want it to define me. But I also realize, I mean, I have absolutely no contact with that person, obviously. And I hope that he isn't doing that to anybody else. But I think, people are worried about not being believed. So, yes. And no one tells people the first time it happens, and then it sort of just becomes easier not to say anything. And, because a lot of people don't understand, they go, well, just leave, or just, why are you staying? And then you stop telling people, you know what I mean? Like you go, oh, you don't understand, so I don't want you nagging me, so I'm just not going to discuss it with you.
Yeah.
So, I think it would be absolutely rife. And what's annoying is the statistics are so high for reported cases, like people dying every week, yet the royal family, Meghan Markle, not going to the King's coronation will be seen on television.
Yeah.
Another feminist getting absolutely torn to shreds. And you just like, it's like they go, oh no, the world doesn't need to hear about how rife domestic violence is.
No,
people are dying every week.
Correct. It's not anything anyone wants to hear. But now you've got Iconic Wealth, right? That's your baby now with your business partner. What do you hope that Iconic Wealth will do for the community? Because with all my favorite people that I'm getting on this podcast, I feel what they're trying to do is to enact a movement. Like they're trying to get a change going, and I see that with you. What do you hope that Iconic Wealth is going to do for you in terms of this new era of yourself with advice?
I hope that I can make time for financial literacy more with the younger female generation, and also from a career progression point of view. That's something that's important to me in the position that I'm in.
Yeah.
From a professional point of view, I'm definitely keen on getting some form of mentoring program out there in some capacity in the new year. That's one of my goals, and engage people in that female tribal manner. Being that cheerleader and infecting as many people as possible with that tribal energy.
Yeah.
So
I can feel that energy.
My aim. Yeah.
I can feel that energy coming through very strongly, Kelly. And we are so lucky that we even have you in WA. So if I want to see you in person, I can. But I really enjoy the messaging you're putting out there. I'm so glad that you're in a space where you can be free with that messaging. And I'm looking forward to what the Iconic Wealth Kelly King movement is going to do for the women in the community. Thank you for being with us today.
So much. Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure.
Subscribe now to be notified of new episodes. Let's change how the story ends. The information discussed in this episode includes strategies that are general in nature. As everyone's situation is different and the information discussed does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs, you should always seek personal advice in regards to your own personal circumstances.